Today, business owners who lost millions of dollars because of President Trump's tariffs have a chance to get some of that money back. The federal government has launched a website for refund claims, exactly 2 months after the Supreme Court ruled that the taxes on imports were unlawful. U.S. Customs estimates it owes a total of $166 billion in tariff refunds and plans to roll out the system in phases. Joining me now, Rick Woldenberg, CEO and chairman of Learning Resources, lead plaintiff in that successful Supreme Court case. It's good to see you, Rick. I know you logged into the portal this morning, so what was your experience?
It worked out pretty well. We submitted about 5,000 entries. I think 10 lines were held up, but otherwise it was a success. It was about 95% of the entries that we made that involved IEEPA tariffs.
So have you been able to figure out how much you're going to get back versus how much it cost you?
What's happening? Friends, welcome to Dr. John Podcast right now. This is absolutely devastating. 24 states, representing 40% of America's GDP, have filed a single lawsuit demanding $100 billion back from the Trump administration. California, New York, Oregon, and 21 others, led by attorneys general who aren't chasing sound bites.
Well, we'll get back all of the IEEPA tariffs that we paid plus interest. We submitted about 95%. It was over $10 million. So that will be welcome when it's received. And I expect the rest of it will straggle in. They have, this will be done in phases. And so later phases will, I think, pick up the rest of it.
Can you possibly calculate that when you had to raise some prices, how much business you lost? So you got the tariff money back, but do you think you're still a net negative?
You know, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about that, honestly. I don't know what business we lost. I think the economy generally shrunk because consumers lost confidence. And obviously you hear about it every day on TV about the affordability crisis. We've been very concerned about that. We make educational products. We don't want them to be unaffordable. So we tried to do what we could to moderate the price increase. And we've withheld on price increases since then to kind of average down, if you will. We want to make our products affordable.
They're chasing the Treasury. It's the largest coordinated legal action against this administration yet, and the timing makes it worse. It didn't land in a vacuum. It landed at the end of the worst week of Trump's presidency. This isn't just a lawsuit. This is the exclamation point at the end of a sentence that reads, "Your entire trade war strategy was unconstitutional. Your economic policy is in shambles. The Supreme Court hates it. The markets are vomiting."
It was a big deal for you to come forward and end up at the Supreme Court. It's not something that happens every day to a guy who runs an educational a company. What did it feel like logging on and seeing that you were going to get millions of dollars back and know that there are countless people out there having the same experience you had because of what you did?
Well, to me, this is a demonstration of the American system. This is how it's supposed to work. We were right on the law, and the court stood behind us. It's very gratifying. Obviously, a $175 billion judgment that will get repaid. That includes the interest. It's a huge sum of money, and it's very exciting to have brought that victory to...
American soldiers are dead, and now half the country is taking you to court to get a refund. This is the kind of legal action that doesn't just threaten the administration's bank account. It threatens the entire narrative of Trump as the master dealmaker, because you can't call yourself a winner when 24 states are forcing you to give back the money you stole under a law that never existed. The demand is simple in its audacity: immediate refunds of $100 billion.
Many thousands of importers that paid a tariff that they that wasn't entitled, and so very gratifying. It also was a way to stand up for our system of government, separation of powers. I take seriously that this is part of history.
Since the Supreme Court's ruling, the Trump administration has imposed a temporary 10% global tariff, is working again on permanent tariffs. You've called it a sham. Would you go back to court?
It's something that we have to evaluate. The Section 122 tariffs are being challenged by actually the other litigants that joined us in the Supreme Court. And there was a hearing a week ago that looked at that question in a very detailed way. So we're hopeful that there may be the possibility of relief on those tariffs. And right now there's two Section 301 investigations that I refer to as shams, because it was announced right after the decision that the government felt entitled to impose tariffs under other provisions. The Constitution says quite clearly that taxes start in Congress, and so there is no right to impose taxes outside of Congress. So you can't make up your mind to tax me and then go looking for a reason to do it. That's a sham.
Rick Woldenberg, thank you so much. And again, congratulations. Glad this is working out for you.
Likely far more once the interest piles up and the legal fees are tallied for every single cent that was collected unlawfully. The states are pointing to the giant, flaming wreckage of the Supreme Court's ruling that already incinerated the legal basis for these tariffs. They're not reinventing the wheel here. They're just pointing at the smoking gun that the highest court in the land already fired. They're saying, you collected hundreds of billions from our businesses and our families based on a power you didn't have. The Supreme Court says so. Pay up now. And the coalition behind this is what makes it so formidable. This isn't a solo act, it's a coordinated strike force. The Attorney General of California is involved. The Attorney General of New York is involved. The Attorney General of Oregon is involved. These are the states that were bludgeoned the hardest by the trade war, the states with the busiest ports and the deepest global ties, and they've put down their partisan swords, at least for this battle, to form an unprecedented legal alliance against the federal government's tariff policy. When you see these particular blue states linking arms and filing joint motions, you know the federal government is about to have a very bad day in court. And here's the thing about this lawsuit that makes it different from all the other noise. It has teeth, real, sharp, judicial teeth. Usually, when states sue the federal government, it's a long slog through ambiguous legal territory. Not this time. The Supreme Court already handed down the map. The Supreme Court already said, loud and clear, that the legal theory underpinning these tariffs was fiction. The states don't have to prove the tariffs were bad policy. They don't have to prove they hurt the economy. All they have to do is walk into court, hold up a copy of the Supreme Court decision and say, Your Honor, they're not listening. Make them. That's the beauty of this legal trap. The states are basically acting as the enforcement arm of the Supreme Court. They're saying, you think you can evade this ruling? You think you can find a loophole? You think you can delay the inevitable? We're here to tell you that the law doesn't work like that. Compliance isn't optional. The money goes back to the people, and it goes back yesterday. And because the legal foundation is so clear, the judges who hear this case are going to be looking at the administration's lawyers with the kind of exhausted patience reserved for someone who's been told no by the Supreme Court, but keeps trying anyway. And how did Trump respond to this legal gut punch? Did he deploy a crack team of constitutional lawyers to craft a nuanced response? No. He went to his digital bunker and started screaming into the void. His response was the political equivalent of a toddler throwing spaghetti at the wall. He called the states traitors. He said they were betraying America. He dusted off the greatest hits, Witch Hunt, Blue State Conspiracy, and fired them off into the ether. That post, that desperate, defensive, angry post, racked up 18 million views. That's a lot of eyeballs on a guy who looks like he's drowning. Here's a little free advice on crisis management. When you're facing a multi-state lawsuit demanding $100 billion based on a unanimous Supreme Court principle, the correct response is not to insult the plaintiffs. The correct response is to have your lawyers quietly start drafting the compliance memo. But that's not in Trump's DNA. He can't acknowledge the loss. He can't say, the courts have spoken and we will honor the law, because that would mean admitting that the entire tariff crusade was built on a legal foundation made of sand. That would mean admitting that the businesses he claimed to protect were actually just shoveling money into a black hole of illegal taxation. So instead, he panics. And when he panics, he attacks. But attacking a lawsuit with 24 states behind it is like trying to stop a tidal wave with a tennis racket. What's particularly devastating here is the sheer scope of the coordination. We've seen states sue before. We've seen blue states challenge federal policy, but 24, that's a movement. That's a declaration of economic independence from a significant chunk of the nation. This isn't a fringe rebellion, it's a mainstream revolt. When California and New York, the economic engines of the country, decide they have to sue to protect their constituents from their own federal government, that represents a fundamental rupture in the relationship between the states and Washington, D.C. It's a political statement as much as a legal one. It's the states saying, your policy was so egregious, so unlawful, and so damaging that we cannot stand idly by. We have to protect our own house because you've set fire to yours. Let's pull back the curtain and look at the specific legal mechanics of why this lawsuit is the checkmate move. The story starts with that seismic Supreme Court decision that came down earlier this year. The court, in a ruling that cut across the usual ideological lines on the core reasoning, looked at the administration's use of emergency powers to justify the tariffs and basically laughed it out of the building. The Supreme Court said, no, the statute you're citing does not authorize you to unilaterally reshape the global trade order. The legal theory was dead on arrival. It was a unanimous rejection of the idea that the president has a magic wand to wave whenever he wants to tax imports. After that ruling, a normal administration would have flipped the switch. They would have stopped the collection, started the audit of how much was taken, and begun the process of returning the money. But this administration didn't do that. They went searching for a legal backdoor. They tried to find some obscure provision, something called a Section 122 workaround, to keep the money machine running. They thought they could just change the stationery and keep sending the same bill. But the judges weren't born yesterday. They saw the workaround for what it was, a blatant attempt to circumvent the clear mandate of the Supreme Court. Lower court judges looked at this new legal theory and said, nice try, still illegal. So now, Trump is stuck in a vice. The Supreme Court has ruled against him. A federal district judge has already ordered the refunds. And now, to add a layer of inescapable pressure, 24 states have lawyered up and said, we're not leaving the courtroom until we see the wire transfer confirmation. There is no escape hatch. There is no hidden tunnel. The legal walls are closing in from the top down and the bottom up. He is checkmated. Legally speaking, the only option left is to take the L, open the Treasury vault, and start cutting checks. But if you know anything about the psychology of this presidency, you know that accepting a loss is the one thing he is physiologically incapable of doing. His ego won't allow it. His entire brand is built on the myth of invincibility and winning. To admit that the tariffs, the centerpiece of his economic nationalism, were not just a bad idea but an illegal idea is to torch his own legacy. So we are watching a man who would rather defy the courts and scream into the abyss than simply comply with the rule of law. And every day he digs in his heels, he digs his legal grave a little deeper. Contempt of court is a real thing, and judges are running out of patience. The political earthquake this creates is just as powerful as the legal one. The fact that we are talking about 24 states joining hands against the White House is a signal to every other state house in America. It says, federal overreach can be fought and it can be beaten. It emboldens other attorneys general to look at other policies, environmental rollbacks, healthcare waivers, immigration orders, and ask, if we can sue and win on tariffs, what else can we sue and win on? This lawsuit is a catalyst. It's a template for resistance that doesn't rely on the gridlocked Congress. It relies on the judiciary and the power of the states. And the states are being surgically precise with their legal strategy. They aren't out there arguing that free trade is good and protectionism is bad. They're not making a political speech in their legal filings. They are citing stare decisis. They are citing the Supreme Court. They are saying, the highest court in the land has spoken. The matter is settled. Your continued refusal to comply is not a policy difference. It's a violation of a court order. That's a winning argument in any courtroom in America. There's no gray area. There's no debate. The Supreme Court said, stop. You didn't stop. Now pay. This lawsuit is the latest and most severe symptom of a complete and total systemic failure of this administration's agenda. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the full picture of the wreckage. The courts are dismantling his executive actions piece by piece. The legislative branch is blocking his military ambitions. His own cabinet looks like a revolving door of dysfunction. The stock market is in free fall, wiping out retirement accounts and pension funds. American service members are coming home in flag-draped coffins from a conflict the country didn't authorize. And now, half the states in the union are suing for a refund on the economic experiment that failed. Where is the win? Point to it. Find me a front where this administration is currently succeeding. You can't, because this is a total collapse. It's a 5-alarm fire in every wing of the House simultaneously. The state lawsuit isn't just another problem, it's the problem that ensures the other problems get worse. It drains the federal coffers, it spikes recession odds, it creates political infighting, and it proves, in a court of law, that the signature policy of the administration was a fraud. The liability explosion. This lawsuit transforms the refund obligation from a federal accounting problem into a multi-jurisdictional legal siege. It's one thing for a single federal judge in a single district to order a refund. It's another thing entirely when 24 separate states, each with their own powerful attorney general and their own independent legal standing, file suit. This means the administration can't just play delay games in one courthouse. They have to fight a war on 24 different legal fronts simultaneously. That's a logistical nightmare that strains the Department of Justice to its breaking point. It multiplies the legal fees, the discovery burdens, and the political headaches exponentially. The unprecedented state coalition. We are witnessing history. States do not usually organize class action style suits against the federal government over trade policy. Trade policy is supposed to be the exclusive domain of the feds. But when the feds act so far outside the bounds of the law that the Supreme Court has to slap them down, the states have a right, arguably a duty, to protect their citizens. This coalition of 24 states represents a seismic shift in federalism. It's a blueprint for how blue states with massive economic leverage can band together to act as a check on executive power. This is the kind of thing they'll teach in law school and political science courses for the next 50 years. The economic gut punch. We already know the federal budget is a mess. Now imagine you have to write a check for over $100 billion that you weren't planning on writing. That's money that disappears from the general fund. That's money that doesn't go to infrastructure, defense contractors, or social programs. That's a massive, self-inflicted fiscal wound. And let's talk about what that does to the broader economy. That kind of drain on the Treasury exacerbates the deficit. It keeps upward pressure on interest rates because the government has to borrow more to cover the shortfall. And all of that feeds directly into the recession fears that are already gripping Wall Street and Main Street. Recession odds were already flashing bright red. This lawsuit just poured jet fuel on the fire. The death of the tariff narrative. The whole pitch was simple. Tariffs would make America rich. They would bring back the factories. They would make China pay. Instead, the Supreme Court said the tariffs were illegal. Businesses screamed bloody murder. Consumers paid higher prices. And now, 24 states are standing in court saying, "Give us our money back." You cannot spin this as a win. You cannot put lipstick on this pig. This is the final, undeniable proof that the trade war was a catastrophic, self-defeating blunder. Trump's entire economic legacy is now defined by a court-ordered refund. That's not the portrait he wanted painted, the fracturing of the GOP. Look at the map of those 24 states. A lot of them are blue, sure, but there are plenty of purple states in there too, and even a few red ones where the Attorney General is a Republican who is just fed up with the chaos. Republican senators and representatives from these states are now in an impossible position. They have to answer for why their home state is suing the leader of their party. Every press conference, every town hall is going to feature a question. Do you support the lawsuit to get our businesses their money back, or do you support the president's illegal tariffs? That is a wedge issue designed to split the party right down the middle. And with the midterms looming, a fractured party is a losing party. The impeachment accelerant. We've been tracking the impeachment chatter regarding the Iran war, but this lawsuit adds a crucial layer to the abuse of power narrative. The Constitution provides a mechanism for removing a president who defies the law and the courts. Here we have a president who was told by the Supreme Court that his actions were illegal. Instead of complying, he sought a workaround. When that failed, he stalled. Now, 24 states have to sue him to force compliance with the Supreme Court. That is the behavior of a man who believes he is above the law. That is precisely the kind of conduct that the impeachment clause was written to address. When you stack this lawsuit on top of the unauthorized war and the tanking approval rating, you get a political environment where the third impeachment goes from if to when, the empowerment of blue state resistance. This lawsuit is a rallying cry. It tells every progressive state house in the country that the courts are a viable, effective avenue for curbing federal overreach. It gives them a playbook. Step 1, wait for a bad federal policy. Step 2, find the legal flaw. Step 3, wait for the courts to confirm it. Step 4, sue to enforce it. This is going to unleash a wave of litigation against every regulatory rollback and executive order that touches on state economies. The blue states have found their voice and their legal footing, and they are not going to shut up anytime soon. So, what is the trajectory from here? Where does this nightmare lawsuit go next? The legal path is pretty straightforward. Because the Supreme Court already did the heavy lifting on the merits of the case, the lower courts handling this state lawsuit are going to fast-track it. There's no complex constitutional question to unravel. There's just a compliance order to enforce. The judges are likely to side with the states swiftly. Trump's lawyers will try to appeal. They'll try to file motions to dismiss. They'll try to run out the clock. But the legal ground beneath their feet is quicksand. Every motion they file just delays the inevitable and racks up more interest on the refund bill. And this lawsuit is not staying in the legal pages. It's going to be the star of the show in the next election cycle. Every single Democratic candidate for Congress, for Senate, for governor is going to have a very simple ad. Donald Trump illegally taxed your family. The Supreme Court agreed, and it took 24 states suing him to try and get your money back. That's it. That's the ad, and it's going to be devastatingly effective. It cuts through all the noise about culture wars and gets right down to the kitchen table issue of money in your pocket that the government took illegally. This lawsuit is the capstone on a week that will go down in the history books as one of the most catastrophic for any modern presidency. And the terrifying thought for the White House is that it's not over. The week isn't even finished yet. More shoes could drop, more judges could rule, more markets could tumble. To understand the true gravity of this moment, you have to understand that this is the complete and utter implosion of the Trump economic miracle. The promise was that he would use his business acumen to protect American wealth. Instead, he launched a trade war based on a legal theory that was laughed out of the highest court in the land. The result wasn't a booming industrial heartland. It was a stock market crash and a multi-billion-dollar class action lawsuit from half the country. The economic aftershocks of this lawsuit are going to be felt for a long time. Yes, businesses getting $100 billion back in refunds sounds stimulative. And it might be. But the method of that stimulus is a sign of profound weakness. It's like getting a tax refund because the IRS realized they audited you by mistake. It's a correction of a crime, not a policy victory. Meanwhile, the hole in the federal budget is real. That money has to come from somewhere. It means more debt. It means more pressure on the dollar. It means a higher likelihood of a recession that wipes out jobs and savings. And politically, this is the gift that keeps on giving for the opposition. The state attorneys general who signed onto this suit, the ones from California, New York, Oregon, and 21 others, they are going to be hailed as heroes in their states. They stood up to the bully and got a court order. On the flip side, Republican politicians who have spent years defending these tariffs now look like they were defending a crime. They were carrying water for a policy that the Supreme Court has labeled as lawless. That's a toxic brand to carry into a midterm election. This lawsuit also feeds the beast of the lawless president narrative that is driving the impeachment conversation. You have a Supreme Court ruling, ignored. You have a federal judge's order, delayed. You have a multi-state lawsuit attacked as a witch hunt. The pattern is undeniable. This is a president who sees the judiciary not as a co-equal branch of government, but as an obstacle to be circumvented. And when you have a president who systematically defies the courts, you have a constitutional crisis. And the solution to a constitutional crisis, according to the founders, is impeachment. Finally, let's appreciate the sheer power dynamic at play with these 24 states. This isn't a fringe movement. This is the economic heart of the country. This is Silicon Valley. This is Wall Street. This is Hollywood. This is the Pacific Rim trade. When that coalition unites and says, "We are taking you to court," they have the resources to hire the best law firms on the planet. They have the data to show the economic damage, and they have the political cover because they are defending their own taxpayers. This lawsuit is a historic marker. It signals that the era of passive acceptance of federal overreach from blue states is over. They have money, they have lawyers, and they have a Supreme Court ruling in their pocket. This is checkmate. There are no more moves on the board. The king can shuffle around and scream at the pieces, but the game is over. The refunds are coming. The economic pain is coming. The political fallout is coming, and it's all happening at once, on top of a war and a market crash. This is the endgame, and we are watching it play out in real time.